In the mountains of Afghanistan, where death lurks behind every rock and survival depends on split-second decisions, 8 Navy SEALs found themselves facing impossible odds. Surrounded by over 50 enemy fighters in terrain that offered no escape, with their radio dead and ammunition running low, they had minutes before being overrun. What happened next would become one of the most extraordinary tales of brotherhood, courage, and the mysterious sniper who appeared from nowhere to change everything. This is not just another war story. This is about ordinary men pushed beyond their limits, about the bonds that hold warriors together when everything falls apart, and about a guardian angel with a rifle who nobody saw coming. In a world where heroes are often fictional, this story proves that sometimes reality is more incredible than any movie script. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rugged landscape of the Hindu Kush Mountains as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez checked his gear one final time. The 8-man SEAL team had been inserted before dawn, their mission clear but dangerous: locate and eliminate a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces from a remote compound deep in Taliban territory. Rodriguez, a veteran of 3 deployments, felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders as he surveyed his team. To his left, Petty Officer Jake Thompson was methodically checking his sniper rifle, his movements precise and deliberate. Thompson had earned his reputation as one of the deadliest marksmen in the teams, with confirmed kills that numbered in the double digits. His calm demeanor under fire had saved their lives more times than Rodriguez could count. Beside Thompson, Petty Officer Carlos Martinez was testing the radio equipment, ensuring their lifeline to base remained strong. Martinez had joined the teams fresh from communication school, but his technical expertise and quick thinking had already proven invaluable on previous missions. He wore his equipment like a second skin, every wire and antenna positioned perfectly for maximum efficiency. The team's medic, hospital corpsman Dylan Foster, was making final adjustments to his medical kit. Foster carried more than just bandages and morphine. He carried the hopes and fears of 7 other men who knew that if they were wounded, their survival might depend entirely on his skill. His gentle hands, which had sutured wounds under enemy fire and administered life-saving treatments in the back of moving vehicles, now carefully organized his supplies with practiced efficiency. Petty Officer Sam Chun, their explosives expert, was quietly reviewing the layout of their target compound one last time. Chun had a gift for understanding how buildings came apart, where to place charges for maximum effect, and how to create diversions that could save lives. His expertise with demolitions was matched only by his ability to think 3 steps ahead of the enemy. The team's communications specialist, Petty Officer Alex Turner, worked alongside Martinez to establish backup communication protocols. Turner's expertise extended beyond radios to electronic warfare and signals intelligence. He had an almost supernatural ability to intercept enemy communications and predict their movements based on radio chatter. Petty Officer Mike Davis, their point man and reconnaissance specialist, studied the terrain through his binoculars, memorizing every ridge, valley, and potential ambush site. Davis had an intuitive understanding of the landscape that bordered on the mystical. He could read the land like others read books, seeing dangers and opportunities that remained invisible to less experienced eyes. Finally, Petty Officer Ryan Mitchell, their heavy weapons specialist, performed a functions check on his machine gun. Mitchell carried the firepower that could turn the tide of any engagement, and his ability to lay down suppressive fire had covered countless extractions and advances. His weapon was his responsibility, but his real job was ensuring his teammates could complete their mission and return home safely. The team had been studying this particular target for weeks. Intelligence reports indicated that Commander Mahmoud Hassan, a former Afghan army officer who had defected to the Taliban, was using the compound as a coordination center for attacks throughout the region. Hassan was responsible for at least 12 attacks on coalition convoys, including one that had killed 4 Marines just 2 weeks earlier. His elimination would significantly disrupt Taliban operations in the area and save countless lives. The compound sat in a natural bowl surrounded by steep mountains on three sides, with only one practical approach from the south. Intelligence suggested that Hassan maintained a force of approximately 15 fighters, a number the SEAL team could handle with proper planning and execution. The mission called for a surgical strike, eliminate Hassan and any fighters who resisted, gather intelligence materials, and extract before enemy reinforcements could arrive. As the team began their movement toward the target, Rodriguez felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded every mission. This feeling never diminished, regardless of how many operations he had completed. Each mission carried its own unique risks and challenges, and complacency was a luxury that special operations forces could never afford. The terrain they crossed was unforgiving, consisting of loose rock, steep inclines, and hidden crevasses that could turn an ankle or break a leg without warning. The altitude, nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, made every step more difficult than it should have been. Their equipment, essential for survival and mission success, added nearly 70 pounds to each man's load. Thompson moved with the fluid grace of a natural athlete, his rifle secured across his chest, but ready to be deployed in seconds. His eyes constantly scanned the surrounding terrain, searching for the elevated positions he would need if the mission went sideways. The sniper's mindset required him to think defensively even during offensive operations, always planning for the shot he might need to take to save his teammates. Martinez maintained constant communication with their base, providing regular updates on their position and status. The radio was their lifeline to artillery support, medical evacuation, and extraction. His job was to ensure that lifeline remained unbroken, regardless of what they encountered. Every few minutes, he would key the handset and whisper their location and status in coded brevity codes that would mean nothing to enemy listeners but everything to their support elements. Foster walked with the measured pace of a man who understood that energy conservation could mean the difference between life and death for wounded teammates. He carried medical supplies that could treat everything from minor cuts to traumatic amputations, but his real value lay in his ability to remain calm and focused when everything around him descended into chaos. His training had prepared him to work on wounded men while bullets flew overhead and explosions shook the ground beneath his feet. Chin's eyes moved constantly between the path ahead and the electronic device in his hand that would detect improvised explosive devices. The Taliban had become increasingly sophisticated in their use of roadside bombs, and his expertise could mean the difference between completing the mission and being carried home in a flag-draped coffin. His equipment could detect metal, chemical signatures, and electronic components, but nothing could replace his intuitive understanding of how the enemy thought and operated. Turner maintained awareness of the electronic environment around them, monitoring enemy communications frequencies and ensuring their own transmissions remained secure. Modern warfare was as much about information as it was about bullets and bombs, and his role in managing that flow of information was critical to their survival. He could intercept Taliban radio traffic, jam their communications when necessary, and ensure their own messages reached their destination without being compromised. Davis led the team along routes that offered the best combination of speed and concealment. His job was to get them to the target without being detected and to find escape routes if the mission required an emergency extraction. Every step he took was calculated, considering fields of fire, natural obstacles, and enemy observation points. His decisions would determine whether they maintained the element of surprise or walked into an ambush. Mitchell brought up the rear, his machine gun ready to provide covering fire if they were attacked from behind. His position allowed him to observe their back trail and ensure no enemy fighters were following them. The weight of his weapon and ammunition made his job the most physically demanding, but his firepower would be essential if they encountered organized resistance. As they approached the final ridge before the target compound, Rodriguez called for a halt. Intelligence reports were one thing, but He had learned to trust his own eyes above all else. The team took up positions along the ridge line, using natural cover to observe their objective while remaining hidden from enemy view. What they saw below made Rodriguez's stomach tighten with concern. The compound was not the modest structure they had been briefed to expect. Instead of a simple building housing 15 fighters, they observed a complex of interconnected buildings surrounded by defensive positions. Even from their elevated position, Rodriguez could count at least 30 individuals moving around the compound, far more than the intelligence estimates had suggested. Thompson adjusted his scope and began a methodical count of enemy personnel. Through his high-powered optics, he could see men carrying weapons moving between buildings, guards posted at strategic locations, and what appeared to be a command post with multiple radio antennas. The intelligence had been wrong, dangerously wrong. Martinez immediately began transmitting an update to their base, reporting the discrepancy between intelligence estimates and ground truth. The response came back quickly. The mission was still a go. Hassan was too important a target to let escape, and higher headquarters believed the SEAL team was capable of handling the increased opposition. Rodriguez faced a decision that would affect the lives of 7 men under his command. The mission parameters had changed significantly, but his orders remained the same. He could abort the mission and face questions about his willingness to take necessary risks, or he could proceed with full knowledge that the odds had shifted against them. The safety of his men weighed against the importance of the mission and the potential lives that would be saved if they succeeded. Foster moved closer to Rodriguez and spoke in a whisper that barely carried over the mountain wind. His medical training made him acutely aware of casualty probabilities, and what he saw below suggested they would need more than basic first aid before the day was over. His concern was evident in his expression, but his determination to support whatever decision Rodriguez made was equally clear. Chun studied the compound through his binoculars, analyzing the defensive positions and tried to identify weaknesses they could exploit. His explosive expertise allowed him to see vulnerabilities that others might miss, but even as trained, I could not eliminate the fundamental problem of being outnumbered by more than 3 to 1. Turner continued monitoring enemy communications, hoping to gather intelligence that might tip the odds in their favor. The Taliban fighters below were maintaining radio discipline, but their occasional transmissions revealed a level of organization and preparation that exceeded normal expectations for a remote compound. Davis examined potential escape routes, knowing that their extraction plan would need significant modification if they proceeded with the mission. The terrain that had provided concealment during their approach would work against them if they needed to withdraw under fire. His job was to identify alternatives before they needed them. Mitchell calculated ammunition requirements for an extended engagement, knowing his machine gun might be the difference between successful extraction and disaster. His weapon could dominate the battlefield, but only if he managed his ammunition carefully and chose his targets wisely. As Rodriguez weighed his options, Thompson made a discovery that would prove crucial in the hours ahead. Through his scope, he observed movement on a ridge line approximately 800 meters from the compound. For just a moment, sunlight reflected off what appeared to be optical equipment, suggesting the presence of an observer or sniper. The reflection was brief, but Thompson's trained eye caught it immediately. The discovery added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous situation. If the Taliban had positioned a sniper to cover their compound, the SEAL team would face threats from multiple directions. Thompson's own counter-sniper skills would be essential, but first they needed to determine exactly what they were facing. Rodriguez made his decision. The mission would proceed, but with modified tactics that accounted for the changed circumstances. They would not abort, but neither would they charge blindly into a situation that had become significantly more dangerous than anticipated. Their success would depend on careful planning, precise execution, and the training that had prepared them for exactly this type of challenge. The sun reached its peak as Rodriguez finalized the assault plan, knowing that every minute of delay gave the enemy more opportunity to detect their presence. The modified plan required splitting the team into 3 elements. Thompson would provide overwatch and counter-sniper support from their current position, while Rodriguez led Martinez, Foster, and Chun in a direct assault on the main compound. Davis, Turner, and Mitchell would establish a support position on the eastern ridge, providing covering fire and securing their extraction route. Thompson studied the distant ridge line, where he had spotted the reflection, calculating wind speed, elevation differences, and the dozen other factors that would affect a long-range shot if it became necessary. His Barrett .50 caliber rifle was capable of reaching targets at distances exceeding a mile, but accuracy at such ranges required perfect conditions and flawless execution. He settled into a position that offered clear fields of fire toward both the compound and the suspected sniper position. Martinez performed a final communications check, ensuring all elements could maintain contact throughout the operation. The terrain would interfere with radio signals, making clear communication challenging, but not impossible. He programmed backup frequencies and established alternate communication protocols in case their primary radios failed or were jammed by enemy electronic warfare equipment. Foster redistributed his medical supplies among the team, knowing that treating wounded teammates might require him to work from multiple positions during the battle. He placed trauma kits with each element and ensured everyone understood basic self-aid procedures. His experience had taught him that the first minutes after being wounded were often the most critical for survival. Chun prepared charges that could breach the compound walls or destroy the buildings if the mission required it. His explosives were precisely calculated to achieve maximum effect without endangering the team or destroying intelligence materials they hoped to recover. The charges would serve as insurance if the situation deteriorated beyond their ability to control. Turner synchronized his electronic warfare equipment with the assault plan, preparing to jam enemy communications at the critical moment when stealth was no longer possible. His equipment could disrupt Taliban radio networks and prevent them from calling for reinforcements, but the jamming would also affect their own communications, requiring precise timing. Davis led Turner and Mitchell toward their support position, moving carefully along the ridge line to avoid detection. Their route required them to cross several open areas where enemy observation was possible, but Davis's knowledge of the terrain allowed them to minimize their exposure. Mitchell's machine gun would provide the base of fire that covered the assault team's movement. Rodriguez's assault element began their descent toward the compound, using a route that approached from the enemy's blind spot. The terrain provided natural concealment, but their movement had to be perfectly coordinated to avoid detection before they were in position to attack. Every step brought them closer to a point where retreat would become impossible. Thompson maintained overwatch on both his teammates and the suspected enemy sniper position. Through his scope, he could see his assault team moving methodically down the mountainside, their progress steady but necessarily slow. The support element was nearly in position on the eastern ridge, and everything appeared to be proceeding according to plan. As Rodriguez's element reached the final covered position before the compound, Martinez detected increased radio traffic from the Taliban positions. The enemy was becoming more alert, possibly due to some subtle sign of the approaching Americans, but they had not yet identified a specific threat. The window for a surprise attack was closing rapidly. Foster checked his watch and confirmed they were on schedule for the coordinated assault. His position with the assault team meant he would be among the first to enter the compound, ready to treat any wounded teammates immediately. His medical training included combat casualty care techniques designed specifically for battlefield conditions where traditional medical facilities were unavailable. Chun armed his charges and prepared for the breaching operation that would begin their assault. The explosive charges were designed to create entry points through the compound walls while minimizing the risk of collapse that might trap defenders or civilians inside. His timing would need to be perfect to ensure the assault team could exploit the confusion immediately following the explosions. Turner prepared to initiate electronic jamming that would isolate the compound from outside communication. His equipment would create a bubble of electromagnetic interference that prevented Taliban fighters from coordinating with their leadership or calling for reinforcements. The jamming would last only minutes before enemy technical specialists found workarounds, making speed essential. Davis positioned Turner and Mitchell in their support position with clear fields of fire covering the compound and surrounding area. Mitchell's machine gun was capable of suppressing enemy movement across a wide area, but his ammunition was limited and would need to be conserved for critical moments. Their position offered excellent visibility, but little protection if the enemy located them. Thompson suddenly detected movement in the distant sniper position he had been watching. Through his scope, he could see the outline of a rifle barrel extending from a concealed position approximately 800 meters away. The enemy sniper was clearly positioned to cover the compound and would pose a significant threat to both the assault team and the support element. Thompson began calculating the shot he might need to take. Rodriguez received confirmation that all elements were in position and ready to execute the assault. The coordination required for such an operation was complex, requiring split-second timing and flawless communication. His hand moved to his radio, preparing to give the command that would initiate the attack and commit his team to a course of action from which there would be no retreat. Martinez monitored enemy radio traffic and detected a subtle change in their communication patterns that suggested growing awareness of a potential threat. The Taliban fighters were beginning to increase their alertness level, possibly due to reports from their own observation posts. The element of surprise would not last much longer. Foster made final preparations for the casualties he expected to treat during and after the assault. His experience had taught him to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The medical supplies he carried represented the difference between his teammates returning home alive or in body bags, a responsibility he felt deeply but never allowed to paralyze him. Chun double-checked his explosive charges one final time, ensuring the electronic detonators were functioning properly and the charges were positioned for maximum effectiveness. His demolitions would create the breaches through which his teammates would assault the compound, making his work the foundation upon which their entire plan depended. Turner stood ready to activate his jamming equipment the moment Rodriguez gave the signal to begin the assault. His electronic warfare capabilities would blind the enemy temporarily, but the advantage would be brief and would need to be exploited immediately. Modern communications equipment could adapt quickly to jamming, making timing critical. Davis and Mitchell confirmed their fields of fire and prepared to provide covering fire for the assault team. Their position offered excellent observation of the compound, but would expose them to counterattack once their location was identified. Mitchell's machine gun would need to achieve immediate fire superiority to protect both the assault team and their own position. Thompson made a final adjustment to his scope and prepared for the shot that would eliminate the enemy sniper before he could threaten the assault team. The range was challenging, but well within his capabilities under ideal conditions. The mountain wind was variable, and the angle required him to compensate for gravity and atmospheric conditions. His shot would need to be perfect on the first attempt, as a miss would alert every enemy fighter in the area. Rodriguez keyed his radio and spoke the single word that would begin the operation: execute. The command traveled instantly to all elements, initiating a carefully choreographed sequence of actions that had been planned and rehearsed but never tested under actual combat conditions. In the next few seconds, 8 American warriors would discover whether their training and courage were sufficient to overcome an enemy that outnumbered them by more than 6 to 1. Thompson's rifle fired first, the .50 caliber round traveling across 800 meters of mountain air toward the enemy sniper position. The massive bullet struck its target with devastating effect, eliminating the threat before the enemy marksman could fire a single shot. The sound of Thompson's rifle echoed across the mountains, announcing to everyone within miles that the battle had begun. Chin's explosive charges detonated simultaneously, blowing gaps in the compound walls and creating clouds of dust and debris that would provide concealment for the assault team's advance. The explosions were carefully calculated to create maximum shock effect while preserving the structural integrity of buildings that might contain valuable intelligence materials. Rodriguez led Martinez and Foster through the breach created by Chen's explosives, their weapons ready to engage any defenders who survived the initial shock of the attack. The compound was larger than it had appeared from a distance, with multiple buildings and defensive positions that would need to be cleared systematically to ensure no enemy fighters survived to continue resistance. Turner activated his jamming equipment, creating an electromagnetic bubble that prevented Taliban fighters from communicating with their leadership or requesting reinforcements. His equipment was powerful, but not unlimited, requiring careful management of power levels and frequency selection to maintain effectiveness against adaptive enemy communications equipment. Davis and Mitchell opened fire from their support position, Mitchell's machine gun raking the compound with precisely aimed bursts that suppressed enemy movement and covered the advance of the assault team. His training had taught him to fire in short bursts that conserved ammunition while maintaining continuous pressure on the enemy. The assault team moved through the compound with practiced efficiency, clearing buildings room by room while searching for their primary target. Each room required careful entry procedures to avoid ambushes while minimizing the risk of civilian casualties. Their movements were coordinated through hand signals and whispered radio communications that maintained unit cohesion. Foster treated the first casualty within minutes of entering the compound, a grazing wound to Martinez's arm that was painful but not life-threatening. His medical training allowed him to assess and treat the wound quickly while maintaining his position with the assault team. The wound was bandaged and the bleeding controlled, allowing Martinez to continue his mission. Chen moved through the compound, identifying enemy defensive positions and preparing additional charges that might be needed to destroy materials or create new entry points. His expertise with explosives extended beyond breaching to include improvised munitions that could be created from materials found in the compound. His adaptability made him invaluable in fluid tactical situations. Thompson maintained overwatch of the entire battle area, his scope moving between potential threat areas and his teammates' positions. His elevated position allowed him to see threats that the assault team could not detect from ground level, making his communication and support fire essential to their survival. His second shot eliminated an enemy fighter who was moving to flank the assault team. The battle intensified as Taliban defenders recovered from their initial shock and began organizing resistance. Enemy fighters who had survived the initial assault began coordinating their defense, using the compound's defensive positions and their knowledge of the terrain to maximum advantage. What had begun as a surprise attack was evolving into a sustained firefight. The firefight intensified as Taliban reinforcements began arriving from positions throughout the surrounding mountains. What Rodriguez had initially assessed as 30 fighters quickly swelled to more than 50 as enemy combatants emerged from concealed positions that intelligence had failed to identify. The sound of gunfire echoed through the mountain valleys, creating a symphony of violence that could be heard for miles. Mitchell's machine gun became the anchor point for the team's defense as enemy fighters attempted to surround their position. His weapon could lay down suppressive fire that prevented large-scale enemy movement, but his ammunition was finite and decreasing with every burst. The mathematics of warfare were simple and unforgiving. 50 enemy fighters would eventually overwhelm 8 Americans unless something changed the equation dramatically. Thompson's sniper rifle continued to pick off high-value targets, his shots eliminating enemy leaders and heavy weapons operators who posed the greatest threat to his teammates. Each shot required careful consideration, as his ammunition was also limited and missing meant wasting precious resources. His elevated position made him nearly invisible to enemy fighters, but it also isolated him from his teammates if they needed to consolidate their defense. Rodriguez found himself fighting a running battle through the compound as Taliban defenders used their intimate knowledge of the terrain to maximum advantage. Every building cleared revealed another defensive position. Every corridor navigated exposed his team to potential ambush. The compound was larger and more complex than intelligence had suggested, with underground tunnels and hidden rooms that allowed enemy movement without detection. Martinez maintained communication with their base despite equipment damage from enemy fire that had grazed his radio. His backup systems allowed continued contact with headquarters, but the reports he was transmitting painted an increasingly desperate picture. The team needed immediate support, but the nearest reinforcements were hours away by ground or helicopter. Foster moved constantly between wounded teammates, his medical supplies dwindling as the battle continued. Chin had taken shrapnel from an enemy grenade, Davis was bleeding from a bullet wound to his leg, and Turner had suffered a concussion from an explosion that had thrown him against a wall. Foster's training allowed him to prioritize treatment based on combat effectiveness rather than medical severity, keeping his teammates fighting while managing their injuries. Chin's explosive expertise became crucial as enemy fighters attempted to use improvised explosive devices against the SEAL team. His ability to identify and disarm enemy bombs prevented several potential disasters, but his own wounds limited his mobility and effectiveness. The shrapnel in his shoulder made carrying and placing explosives increasingly difficult, forcing him to rely more heavily on his teammates for support. Turner's electronic warfare equipment continued jamming enemy communications, but Taliban fighters were adapting their tactics to operate without radio coordination. His equipment was becoming less effective as the enemy learned to use visual signals and predetermined plans that did not require electronic communication. The technological advantage was disappearing as primitive tactics proved their enduring effectiveness. Davis and Mitchell found their support position increasingly untenable as enemy fighters located their position and began concentrating fire against them. Mitchell's machine gun had become a target that drew enemy attention, making their concealed position a liability rather than an asset. They would need to relocate soon or risk being overrun by superior numbers. Thompson observed enemy movement patterns from his elevated position and realized the Taliban fighters were implementing a coordinated assault plan that would eventually overwhelm his teammates through sheer numbers. Multiple enemy groups were maneuvering to surround the compound, while others maintained pressure from fixed positions. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly despite the SEAL team's superior training and equipment. Rodriguez made the difficult decision to begin planning for extraction under fire, knowing that their mission objectives had become secondary to survival. The primary target, Hassan, remained unlocated despite their search of multiple buildings, and the intelligence materials they hoped to recover might not exist or might be destroyed in the fighting. His responsibility to his men took precedence over mission completion. Martinez received word from headquarters that extraction helicopters were airborne, but still 40 minutes away from their position. 40 minutes was an eternity in a firefight against overwhelming odds, requiring the team to hold their position and maintain combat effectiveness despite mounting casualties and dwindling supplies. The timeline seemed impossible, but abandoning hope was not an option. Foster's medical assessment of the team revealed that several members were operating with injuries that would normally require immediate evacuation. Chen's shoulder wound was affecting his ability to use explosives effectively. Davis's leg wound was limiting his mobility, and Turner's concussion was causing periodic disorientation. Only Rodriguez, Thompson, and Mitchell remained fully combat effective. Chen identified a cache of enemy explosives that could be turned against the Taliban fighters if properly employed. His plan required him to move through areas under direct enemy observation, but the explosives could create a diversion that might allow the team to consolidate their position for extraction. The risk was enormous, but the potential benefit made the attempt worthwhile. Turner's jamming equipment suddenly failed, damaged by enemy fire that had struck his position during a Taliban assault. The loss of electronic warfare capability meant enemy fighters could now coordinate their attacks through radio communication, significantly increasing the threat level. The team's technological advantages were disappearing one by one. Davis and Mitchell executed a fighting withdrawal from their support position, using covering fire and tactical movement to reach the main compound without being overwhelmed. Mitchell's machine gun provided the base of fire that allowed their movement, but his ammunition was nearly exhausted. Their consolidation with the main team improved coordination, but concentrated all team members in a smaller area. Thompson's ammunition reached critically low levels as he continued engaging enemy fighters who threatened his teammates. Each remaining round had to count, forcing him to choose targets based on immediate threat level rather than target opportunity. His sniper rifle was still effective, but without ammunition, it would become merely an expensive club. The Taliban fighters launched a coordinated assault on multiple sides of the compound, using overwhelming numbers to pressure every defensive position simultaneously. Rodriguez realized that his team could not defend against such an assault with their remaining ammunition and combat effectiveness. The mathematics of warfare had reached an inevitable conclusion. 8 Americans could not indefinitely hold off 50 determined attackers. Foster made the decision to consolidate all wounded team members in a single defensive position, knowing that his ability to provide medical care during active combat was limited. His supplies were nearly exhausted, and several team members required medical attention that exceeded his field capabilities. Survival had become more important than mission completion. Chin's attempt to employ enemy explosives against Taliban fighters met with partial success, creating enough disruption to delay their assault but not prevent it. His wounded shoulder limited his ability to place charges effectively, and enemy fire prevented him from reaching optimal positions. The diversion bought time, but did not fundamentally change the tactical situation. Rodriguez called for danger-close artillery support despite the risk to his own team, knowing that conventional defensive measures were no longer sufficient. The artillery would arrive within minutes, but required precise targeting to avoid hitting the SEAL team while eliminating enemy fighters. The margin for error was razor-thin, but alternatives were running out. Martinez transmitted their exact coordinates for the artillery strike, while simultaneously calling for immediate medical evacuation for multiple wounded team members. His communication with headquarters revealed the desperate nature of their situation and the urgent need for reinforcement or extraction. The radio traffic painted a picture of Americans fighting for survival against overwhelming odds. Thompson made the decision to abandon his overwatch position and join his teammates in the compound, recognizing that his isolated position would become untenable when the artillery strike arrived. His movement required crossing open ground under enemy observation, but remaining in place guaranteed his death or capture. The sniper gathered his remaining ammunition and prepared for what might be his final tactical movement. The team consolidated into a single building that offered the best defensive position within the compound, knowing that they would make their final stand from that location. Their ammunition was nearly exhausted, their medical supplies were gone, and several team members were wounded seriously enough to require immediate evacuation. The situation had reached the point where survival depended entirely on outside intervention. Foster established a casualty collection point in the most protected area of their defensive position, knowing that his wounded teammates would need immediate medical attention if they survived the next few minutes. His medical training included battlefield surgery techniques that might be necessary if evacuation was delayed. The triage decisions he faced would determine who lived and who died. Rodriguez prepared his team for what might be their final battle, knowing that American warriors did not surrender regardless of the odds they faced. Their training had prepared them for this moment, and their brotherhood would sustain them through whatever came next. The SEAL ethos demanded that they fight to the last round and the last breath, trusting that their sacrifice would honor their fallen comrades and the country they served. The sound of incoming artillery grew louder as the first rounds approached their target, heralding destruction that would fall within meters of the American position. The precision required to eliminate enemy fighters without killing friendly forces tested the limits of military technology and human skill. In seconds, they would discover whether salvation or destruction was falling from the sky. Suddenly, from a ridgeline nearly 1,000 meters away, a rifle shot echoed across the battlefield. An enemy fighter who had been preparing to assault the SEAL's position dropped instantly, his weapon falling silent. Then another shot, and another enemy fighter fell. Someone was providing sniper support from an impossible distance, engaging targets with precision that defied explanation. Rodriguez looked toward Thompson, but his team's sniper was beside him in the compound, his rifle empty and his position compromised. The shots were coming from someone else, someone who possessed extraordinary skill and was willing to risk everything to help 8 Americans who were fighting for their lives against impossible odds. The mysterious sniper's intervention came at the exact moment when the SEAL team's situation had become desperate beyond any hope of conventional rescue. From his impossible distance of nearly 1,000 meters, the unknown marksman began systematically eliminating Taliban fighters with a precision that defied every rule Rodriguez understood about long-range shooting. Each shot found its target despite wind conditions, elevation changes, and atmospheric factors that should have made such accuracy impossible. Thompson stared in disbelief toward the distant ridge line, where muzzle flashes revealed the sniper's position. His own expertise told him that the shots being fired were beyond the capability of standard military equipment under current conditions. The wind was gusting unpredictably, the angle was extreme, and the distance required compensation for factors that most marksmen could not calculate accurately. Yet the mysterious shooter continued hitting targets with mechanical precision. Rodriguez felt the immediate tactical pressure decrease as enemy fighters began falling to the distant sniper's fire. Taliban fighters who had been preparing for a final assault on the compound suddenly found themselves under attack from an unexpected direction. Their coordinated advance dissolved into confusion as leaders fell and surviving fighters sought cover from an enemy they could not see or locate. Martinez attempted to establish radio contact with the unknown sniper, broadcasting on multiple frequencies in hope of identifying their mysterious ally. His calls went unanswered, but the sniper's fire continued with devastating effectiveness. Whoever was providing support understood military tactics and was targeting high-value enemies with the skill of a professional warrior. Foster used the reprieve provided by the sniper's intervention to treat his wounded teammates more thoroughly. Chen's shoulder wound required immediate attention to prevent infection. Davis's leg wound needed proper bandaging to control bleeding, and Turner's concussion symptoms were worsening. The temporary reduction in enemy pressure allowed him to provide care that might save their lives during extraction. Chen studied the pattern of the sniper's fire and realized their unknown ally was eliminating enemy fighters in a sequence that would maximize disruption to Taliban defensive positions. The targets were not random, but carefully selected to destroy enemy command structure and heavy weapons capability. Someone with extensive military training was making tactical decisions that protected the SEAL team. Turner's damaged communication equipment suddenly crackled to life with a transmission on a frequency he had not been monitoring. The voice was American, speaking with the calm professionalism of a military operator. SEALs in the compound. This is Guardian Angel. Maintain your position. Artillery will be accurate. Extraction inbound your position. Davis recognized immediately that their unknown ally was not just providing sniper support, but had somehow established communication with their command structure and was coordinating the entire rescue operation. The mysterious Guardian Angel possessed capabilities and access that suggested military or intelligence background at the highest levels. Mitchell observed enemy fighters retreating from positions they had held throughout the battle, falling back under pressure from the distant sniper, who seemed able to engage targets anywhere within a mile radius circle. The Taliban's numerical advantage was being neutralized by a single marksman whose skill exceeded anything Mitchell had witnessed in years of special operations. Thompson attempted to locate the sniper's position through his own scope, hoping to provide counter-battery support or at least identify their ally. Despite knowing the general direction of the incoming fire, he could not locate the actual firing position. The unknown sniper was employing concealment techniques that rendered him effectively invisible even to another trained marksman. Rodriguez realized that their mysterious ally was not operating alone, but was coordinating with overhead assets that the SEAL team could not see or hear. The precision of the artillery strike that followed confirmed that Guardian Angel had access to real-time intelligence and fire support coordination that exceeded normal capabilities for a single operator working independently. The artillery barrage landed with devastating accuracy, eliminating enemy positions while leaving the compound and surrounding area where the SEALs were located completely untouched. The precision required to achieve such accuracy suggested that someone was providing real-time targeting data and adjustments that ensured friendly forces were protected while enemy positions were destroyed. Martinez received confirmation from headquarters that extraction helicopters were approaching the landing zone with minimal delay, suggesting that someone with significant authority had expedited their mission. The timeline for rescue had been compressed from 40 minutes to less than 10, indicating intervention at command levels that exceeded normal operational procedures. Foster prepared his wounded teammates for helicopter extraction, knowing that proper medical care awaited them at the base hospital. Chen's shoulder wound would require surgery, Davis's leg wound needed specialist attention, and Turner's concussion required monitoring for potential brain injury. Their survival had been ensured by intervention that bordered on the miraculous. Chun gathered intelligence materials recovered from the compound during their brief search, ensuring that their mission would not be a complete loss despite the tactical challenges they had faced. The documents and electronic storage devices might contain information that justified the risks they had taken and the wounds they had suffered. Turner monitored enemy radio traffic and confirmed that Taliban fighters were retreating from the area in disorder, abandoning positions they had held for months. The psychological impact of the sniper's intervention had broken their morale and destroyed their confidence in their ability to control the terrain they considered their own. Davis prepared the landing zone for helicopter extraction, ensuring that debris from the artillery strike would not interfere with aircraft operations. His experience with helicopter operations allowed him to anticipate pilot requirements and establish the necessary safety protocol for extraction under potentially hostile conditions. Mitchell maintained security while his teammates prepared for extraction, his machine gun ready to engage any enemy fighters who might attempt to interfere with their rescue. His ammunition was nearly exhausted, but the distant sniper's continued presence provided overwatch that supplemented his own defensive capabilities. Thompson tried one final time to locate the mysterious sniper who had saved their lives, scanning the distant ridge line for any sign of movement or equipment. His search was unsuccessful, but he could still hear the occasional shot that confirmed their guardian angel remained on station and ready to engage threats. The sound of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of their extraction aircraft, 2 Blackhawks carrying additional security forces and medical personnel. The helicopters approached with confidence that suggested their crews had been assured the landing zone was secure and that enemy air defenses had been neutralized. Rodriguez coordinated the extraction sequence, ensuring that wounded team members were loaded first while maintaining security around the landing zone. The helicopter crews worked with practiced efficiency, their movements suggesting they had been briefed on the tactical situation and understood the urgency of the medical evacuations required. Foster supervised the loading of his wounded teammates, providing medical information to the aircraft medics who would continue treatment during flight. His battlefield medicine had stabilized their injuries, but they needed surgical care that could only be provided at a proper medical facility with full operating capabilities. Chun carried the intelligence materials onto the helicopter, ensuring that their mission objectives were achieved despite the tactical complications they had encountered. The documents and electronic devices might contain information about Taliban operations throughout the region, making their recovery valuable despite the cost in blood and ammunition. Turner maintained communication with headquarters throughout the extraction, providing real-time updates on personnel status and mission completion. His damaged equipment functioned well enough to ensure that command elements understood the team's condition and requirements for medical treatment. Davis ensured that no equipment was left behind that could provide intelligence to enemy forces, following established procedures for sensitive material security. Their weapons, communication equipment, and specialized gear were accounted for and evacuated with the team to prevent enemy exploitation. Mitchell provided rear security as the helicopters prepared for departure, his machine gun covering potential enemy approaches to the landing zone. The distant snipers' continued presence was reassuring, but military doctrine required multiple layers of security for aircraft operations in hostile territory. As the helicopters lifted off from the landing zone, Rodriguez attempted one final radio transmission to their mysterious guardian angel. Guardian Angel, this is SEAL Team 6. Thank you for the save. Who are you? The response came back immediately, spoken in the same calm, professional tone they had heard earlier. Just a fellow warrior. Stay safe. Thompson continued scanning the distant ridge line as their helicopter gained altitude, hoping to catch a glimpse of the sniper who had saved 8 American lives through skill and courage that defied explanation. His search revealed nothing, as if their guardian angel had vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. The helicopters turned toward their base, carrying wounded warriors who would live to fight another day, because someone had been willing to risk everything to protect fellow Americans. The identity of their savior remained unknown, but his intervention had demonstrated the bonds that connected all warriors who served their country in harm's way. Rodriguez looked back toward the compound that had nearly become their tomb, knowing that they would never have survived without intervention that bordered on the miraculous. 8 SEALs had entered a death trap and emerged alive because a mysterious guardian angel had possessed the skill and courage to engage impossible odds from an impossible distance. The mystery of their savior's identity would haunt the team for years to come, but they would never forget the lesson learned in those desperate minutes. Warriors never fight alone when they serve a cause greater than themselves. Brotherhood extends beyond unit boundaries and service branches to encompass all who wear their country's uniform. As their base came into view, Rodriguez knew that their story would be classified and their guardian angel's identity would remain protected by the same security protocols that governed all special operations. But somewhere, a warrior with extraordinary skill was continuing the mission that bound all special operators together, protecting those who serve and ensuring that no American fighter stands alone against the darkness. 6 months after their rescue from the Afghan mountains, the 8 SEALs had returned to their normal rotation of training and operations, but the mystery of their guardian angel continued to occupy their thoughts. Rodriguez, now recovered from his own minor wounds, had made unofficial inquiries through special operations channels, hoping to identify the sniper who had saved their lives. Every lead had reached a dead end, as if their savior existed outside normal military records. Thompson had used his connections within the sniper community to research marksmen capable of the shots they had witnessed, but no one acknowledged knowledge of operations in their area during that time frame. The skill level required for those shots at that distance under those conditions narrowed the field to perhaps a dozen individuals worldwide, yet none of them would admit to being in Afghanistan during their rescue. Martinez had analyzed communication intercepts and electronic signatures from their rescue, searching for evidence that might reveal their guardian angel's identity or organizational affiliation. His technical investigation revealed sophisticated communication equipment and encryption that suggested government-level resources, but specific attribution remained impossible to establish. Foster had returned to his medical duties, treating wounded warriors who arrived at their base hospital with injuries similar to those his teammates had suffered. His experience treating battlefield wounds in austere conditions had made him a more effective medic, but he continued wondering about the warrior who had made their rescue possible. Chun had analyzed the intelligence materials recovered from the compound, discovering information about Taliban operations that had prevented numerous attacks on coalition forces. Their mission had achieved strategic success despite tactical complications, validating the risks they had taken and the intervention that had saved their lives. Turner had been promoted and assigned to a new unit specializing in electronic warfare, where his experience with battlefield communication systems made him invaluable for training other operators. His damaged communication equipment from their rescue had been repaired and returned to service, but he maintained it as a reminder of their miraculous survival. Davis had recovered fully from his leg wound and returned to his duties as point man for special operations missions throughout the region. His experience with escape and evasion under extreme circumstances had enhanced his tactical skills and made him more valuable for high-risk operations requiring expert navigation and reconnaissance. Mitchell had been assigned to a training unit where his experience with sustained combat operations made him an ideal instructor for new special operators. His machine gun from their rescue had been retired and replaced with newer equipment, but he kept it cleaned and maintained as a memorial to their brotherhood and survival. The official after-action report for their mission made no mention of external sniper support, listing their extraction as successful despite enemy contact, exceeding intelligence estimates. The classified nature of their operation required that certain details remain protected, including any reference to capabilities or personnel that might compromise ongoing operations. Rodriguez received notice that he had been selected for promotion and assignment to a training command where his experience would be used to prepare new SEAL teams for combat operations. His leadership during their desperate situation had been recognized by senior commanders, though the full details of their rescue remained classified beyond normal access levels. Thompson accepted assignment to an advanced marksmanship school where his expertise would be used to train military and law enforcement snipers in extreme-range shooting techniques. His encounter with their guardian angel had motivated him to push the boundaries of what was considered possible in precision shooting, advancing techniques that would benefit future warriors. The team maintained contact through informal channels, meeting periodically to discuss their shared experience and continuing efforts to identify their mysterious savior. These gatherings served as both reunion and investigation, as each member shared new information that might solve the puzzle of their guardian angel's identity. During one such meeting, Chin revealed that his analysis of the compound's intelligence materials had uncovered references to a legendary marksman known to Taliban fighters as the Ghost. According to intercepted communications, this individual had been responsible for eliminating high-value Taliban leaders throughout the region for several years, always striking from impossible distances and vanishing without trace. Turner added that his electronic warfare analysis had identified communication signatures consistent with highly classified government operations, suggesting their guardian angel operated with official sanction at levels requiring extraordinary security clearances. The sophistication of the supporting technology exceeded normal military capabilities and suggested intelligence community involvement. Davis reported that his conversations with other special operations personnel had revealed similar stories of mysterious sniper support during high-risk operations, always appearing at critical moments and disappearing without explanation. The pattern suggested a systematic program rather than random individual actions, but no official acknowledgement of such operations existed. Mitchell shared information from his training duties indicating that advanced sniper techniques being developed exceeded published capabilities by significant margins. Experimental equipment and training programs suggested that military and intelligence agencies possess capabilities far beyond what was publicly acknowledged, including precision shooting at ranges previously considered impossible. Foster mentioned that wounded personnel arriving at their base hospital occasionally spoke of sniper support that appeared from nowhere during desperate situations, always described with reverence and gratitude, but never officially documented. The medical records made no mention of external support, maintaining operational security while acknowledging the reality of their rescue. Martinez revealed that his communication intercepts had identified a pattern of encrypted transmissions that preceded successful special operations extractions throughout the theater, suggesting coordination between unknown assets and official rescue operations. The encryption was beyond his ability to break, but the timing correlation was undeniable. Rodriguez shared his discovery that senior special operations commanders would neither confirm nor deny the existence of capabilities or personnel that might explain their rescue, but their expressions suggested knowledge they could not officially acknowledge. The wall of classification surrounding their guardian angel appeared to be institutional rather than accidental. Thompson described his research into experimental shooting techniques and equipment that pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering, revealing programs that could theoretically achieve the precision they had witnessed. However, these programs remained classified, and their operational deployment was neither confirmed nor denied by authorities. 6 months later, Rodriguez received an unexpected visitor at his new training command. A civilian contractor introducing himself only as Michael requested a private meeting to discuss their Afghanistan operation. Michael's knowledge of classified details immediately identified him as someone with extraordinary access to sensitive information. Michael explained that their guardian angel had been a participant in a highly classified program designed to provide emergency support to special operations teams in extremist situations. The program operated outside normal military channels to maintain absolute operational security and deniability, utilizing individuals with exceptional capabilities working under the deepest possible cover. The program, Michael revealed, was staffed by volunteers from elite military and intelligence units who possessed skills that exceeded normal human limitations through a combination of natural ability, advanced training, and experimental equipment. These individuals operated alone, maintaining no official contact with the units they supported, appearing only when American lives were in immediate danger. Michael confirmed that their guardian angel had been Master Chief Petty Officer James Harrison, a SEAL sniper who had been declared killed in action 3 years earlier during a classified operation. Harrison had volunteered for the Guardian Angel program after his official death, operating under complete anonymity to protect his family and maintain operational security for the program. Harrison had tracked their mission from the beginning, positioning himself to provide support if their situation became desperate. His shooting position had been prepared days in advance, with equipment and supplies cached to sustain extended operations if necessary. His intervention had been precisely timed to maximize effectiveness while minimizing exposure. Michael explained that Harrison's official death would remain unchanged to protect the program and his family, but his sacrifice deserved recognition from those whose lives he had saved. Harrison had been killed 2 weeks after their rescue during another Guardian Angel operation, dying as he had lived after his official death, protecting fellow warriors who needed help beyond normal capabilities. The program would continue operating with other volunteers, Michael assured them, ensuring that future American warriors in desperate situations would have access to capabilities that exceeded normal military support. The Guardian Angels would continue their mission in absolute secrecy, honored only by those whose lives they saved and the families who would never know their names. Rodriguez accepted a small metal disc that Michael presented to each team member, explaining that it served as both memorial and recognition of their Guardian Angel sacrifice. The disc bore no markings or inscriptions, but would be recognized by program participants as acknowledgement of Harrison's service and their team's survival. Michael departed as suddenly as he had arrived, leaving only the metal discs and the knowledge that their guardian angel had been a real warrior who had given everything to protect fellow Americans. The mystery was solved, but the classification would remain forever, protecting those who continued Harrison's mission. Years later, when Rodriguez retired from active duty and became a civilian, he would sometimes hold the disc and remember the voice that had spoken to them from an impossible distance, just a fellow warrior. Stay safe. Master Chief Harrison had kept his promise, ensuring that 8 SEALs returned home to their families. The Guardian Angel program continued its mission, staffed by volunteers who understood that some services to country required complete anonymity and ultimate sacrifice. They operated in shadows deeper than any official classification, honored only by the lives they saved and the silence they maintained. Rodriguez and his teammates never spoke publicly about their guardian angel, understanding that some secrets served purposes greater than personal recognition. They lived with the knowledge that extraordinary warriors continued protecting American forces around the world, asking nothing in return except the opportunity to serve. The bonds forged in that Afghan compound strengthened over years of continued service, reminding all 8 men that brotherhood extends beyond unit boundaries to encompass all who wear their country's uniform. Their guardian angel had taught them that warriors never fight alone when they serve causes greater than themselves. Master Chief Harrison's sacrifice was recorded only in the memories of those he saved and the ongoing operations of guardian angels who continued his mission. His legacy lived in every successful rescue, every life saved, and every American warrior who returned home because someone was watching from the shadows, ready to intervene when hope seemed lost.